Have you ever heard the parable of the Mexican fisherman and the banker? Well, I'm going to read it to you. It's in a couple of books, the 80-20 Principle, the 4-Hour Work Week, but it relates to our topic on the minimum viable lifestyle. An American investment banker was taking a much-needed vacation in a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. The boat had several large fresh fish in it. The investment banker was impressed by the quality of the fish and asked the Mexican how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, "Only a little while." The banker then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The Mexican fisherman replied he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican fisherman replied, "I sleep late, I fish a little, play with my children, take siesta with my wife, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life, senor." The investment banker scoffed. "I'm an Ivy League MBA, and I could help you. You could spend more time fishing, and with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats until eventually you would have a whole fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to the middleman, you could sell directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You can control the product, processing, and distribution." Then he added, "Of course, you would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, where you would run your growing enterprise." The Mexican fisherman asked, "But senor, how long will all this take?" To which the American replied, 15 to 20 years. "But what then?" asked the Mexican. The American laughed and said, "Well, that's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You could make millions." "Millions, senor? Then what?" To which the investment banker replied, "Then you would retire. You could move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siesta with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play your guitar with your amigos." Welcome to the With Joe Wehbe Podcast. Today we're up to part 3 of the minimum viable lifestyle, the first of our big 3 ideas to kick off the podcast. And today, as I said, we're going a bit deeper on clarity implications of the MVL. And I always love that story. There's some very powerful lessons in it. And I'm sure those are mulling over in your brain right now. I think I retired at the age of 25. I'm just hoping that I'm not required to come out of retirement. So fingers crossed, touch wood. At the moment, it's looking good, but I'm enjoying retirement. Are you enjoying retirement? That's the question to ask. The parable of the Mexican fisherman really highlights the circular logic we have, the counterintuitive way we kind of live, which is why I want to talk about clarity, because instead of clarity, we use comparison as our guiding principle, when we should be leaning on clarity. Comparison. Have you ever heard the very funny story, but also the amazing marketing campaign, Paylessy shoes? It's worth I'll see if I'll put it in the show notes, but it's certainly worth a Google or a YouTube, which is basically Payless Shoes, the discount shoe brand based retailer from the United States, ran a mock setup store called Paylessy, making the same cheap, affordable, everyday shoes, rebranded as a luxury brand. And people actually went and paid way more for the shoes that they're normally happy to pay cost price for. It's basically pointing out how the placebo effect is very real in a lot of our consumer behavior. It's a symbol of social proof, of status, how well these things work on us. They work for a very good reason, because of the way we're wired, which we will unpack a lot in this podcast. But the basic idea, for the purposes of understanding minimum viable lifestyle and clarity is that so much of what we appreciate, aspire to, and find value in, we only do because others find value in it. Because others put it up on a pedestal. We're very bad at judging intrinsic value, the value of something as it is, on its own merits, without the expectations and opinions of others. We're really bad at that because we're open to social pressure so that we fit into the group. That made sense when we were tribes. But no tribes person or caveman ever grew up wanting a Ferrari. They never grew up wanting a mansion. And they never grew up wanting fancy shoes. And because of that, they're also never jealous of other people who had those things. And they also never thought that they'd be very, very happy if they had a Ferrari, if they had a mansion, or if they had expensive shoes. So you see the point I'm getting at here. I want to be very specific, though, with this point we're trying to make today. Clarity. It's not that material things are bad. It's very easy to take that message away. What I would say about material things is that it's very rare that they're needs. It's most often that they're wants, that they're bonuses. And when you look objectively at what your minimum viable lifestyle is, like what's the least you could live on and with, that your life would be objectively comfortable, happy, and you'd be easily surviving. It's funny how few of those high ticket items you find in there. But ironically, people spend a lot of time, extol a lot of effort and energy into chasing things like status. Now, status is not just a fancy job title or dressing the part. Status is also wanting to be the best at something. Maybe you never thought about that. Status is wanting to get the award. Status is wanting to get the Nobel Prize, the Oscar, the gold medal at the Olympics, being the captain of the team, being the leader of the project, being the boss. Those things are all based on status. Unlike flashy cars and mansions, the cliches of the high roller lifestyle, these things are socially reinforced, not laughed at. There's not really much opposition to those. But they're largely based on status. Why do you care about status for? Again, we can unpack the evolutionary explanation for why you crave status. It's wired deep within you. It probably boosted your mating odds, is the long story short. But that's not necessarily the world we live in anymore. So this is why it's really important to unpack whether we do... I would have said in part one, that we surprise ourselves how much of our standards don't come from us, which is the whole point around cavemen didn't want to drive Ferraris. For you to want something, it has to be so conceived in you socially. And the 5 whys, combined with writing out your MVL, is the exercise to do that. There's something I normally say, which is there's nothing more expensive than not knowing your MVL. And the fastest way to become rich and wealthy is just knowing your minimum viable lifestyle. Because why do people want to be rich and wealthy? There's a famous line, I wouldn't call it a line, story about Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, who's a big American entrepreneur. And he has a book called Delivering Happiness, I believe. And he has this line, he always asks people why they want to be rich. And he always asks them, and he keeps asking why you want to be rich. And they say, I want to be rich so I can do this. Or why do you want to do that? And he asks the questions until he always gets the same answer from everyone, which is they actually want to be happy. That's the end goal. What people say they want is different to what they really want at the end of the day. And that's what the parable of the Mexican fisherman teaches us. So the 5 whys, keep asking why. Why do I want those shoes? Why do I want that mansion? Why do I want a Ferrari? Why do I not want those things? Unpack it. So this is all the MVL framework has for me, which, side note, all the things we talk about work for me first. And this is why I'm passionate about sharing them, because I think and have been told so far that they can be helpful for others. And when Scott and I and other people talk about MVL, it helps figure out with clarity what is actually important to me, not what everyone else thinks is worthwhile. Because everyone will pat you on the back for owning a business. Everyone will pat you on the back for being the boss. Everyone will pat you on the back for the Nobel Prize, the gold medal, for being the project leader. But the problem when you want the most, when you want to be the top of the pile with the recognition, is that you are attaching and anchoring happiness to the opinions of the masses, which is very volatile, very likely to change, and very hard to maintain. And this is why, to wrap up this little mini-series on the minimum viable lifestyle, we remind ourselves that the question is, what's the least your life can be? Knowing my minimum viable lifestyle helps me on a daily basis. And that's the truth. And that's why we started with it. That's why we think it's the most important of the ideas. We have a natural tendency to see how we're going by judging where our peers are. We have that inbuilt in us. It's not something that's that easy to opt out of. It's almost pre-wired, right? You want to see how the people you went to school with, your siblings, your other family members, and you want to. It's so often that we try and judge how we're going based on where they're up to and where we are in relation to them. Knowing your minimum viable lifestyle helps protect against that. If I see one of my friends achieve something, or this person achieves that, or so-and-so is doing whatever, or I get challenged, or if people make you feel insecure about your income, or some feature of yourself, or what you're doing, or your profession, that it's not distinguished enough, or it's not respected enough. When we get those jabs, which are pretty natural, which are actually hard to avoid against, well, we have something to come back to. So this is what, again, I'm the first example of this. Life is not now, we're not immune to starting to feel insecure about things from time to time. Like, should I be doing more of this and doing less of that? But what always happens when we get in the trap of comparing ourselves or trying to judge ourselves when we make a decision or looking at what other people value is that we have this thing now where we can come back, we can get a step back from our lifestyle. We can look at it the way it is now and realize, hang on, I have everything I want. I have everything I need. I have it today. I don't need to do all these other things. I don't need to want more things. What I have now is good. Why did I feel dissatisfied just then? Why did I compare myself to my neighbor or my friend? So, everyone's minimum viable lifestyle is different. It's not to be judged. No two people are the same. No two people's lifestyles are the same. But I just see this principle, this framework pop up for me everywhere. It pop-ups when I make decisions. It keeps me focused on what I value again. Like, I just That was the big focus of this episode. It's what we value, what we invest value into, what we invest our self-esteem into, what we select and opt into doing, and being comfortable with that. It all comes, for me, from this principle. So I hope that in these 3 parts, I've established the framework and the base of the minimum viable lifestyle. I hope I've made it clear, and hopefully it's been clear how you can implement it. Now, a big focus of this podcast is getting more self-aware, and in such a way that we can hopefully open doors for ourselves and open doors for others. So I think the MVL is very important in doing that, because it really gives us that platform. It shows you how much you can sacrifice, how much you can go without to do the things that are most intrinsically aligned with you. I maintain it's the fastest way to get rich is learning how little we really need, and how the good things in life really cost very little and can be obtained very quickly. That we don't need to delay living for tomorrow. So hopefully you take that away. Remember that resources on the minimum viable lifestyle and all the blogs will be available on the website www.withjoewehbe.com, and you can sign up there to get these emailed in the podcast order via email if you prefer to get them that way, with the blogs and with the links. But until then, that's basically it from me. Just remember that as you go out in the world, the best way to open doors for you is to concentrate on opening doors for others. Thank you.